think that commercialization of hip hop is like a plague of venereal disease, like a fucking, it's like a cancer. It's something that we need some medicine for it. We need an antidote for it. It's like a poison, guys. If that makes sense. The commercialization of hip hop is a poison. I think that we should really address this more. We should really address the powers that be. Because the commercialization of something so genuine and authentic takes the authenticity out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If you commercialize underground music, then it's not underground music no more. You know, if you commercialize a mom and pop, chicken and waffle spot, it's not a mom and pop no more. You know, and that's what happened to all the mom and pop stores to begin with. You feel me?
Yeah.
Remember we had mom and pop. The mom and pop record stores kept the music alive in the community. The reason why the music is dying in the community is because we don't make records no more. You know, and shout out to Cactus Music, man, for keeping their albums. It's Cactus Music in Houston. They sell albums out of that place because they'll tell you that you can't roll a joint on a download. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't roll a joint on a download. And at the end of the day, that's the most important part of our community, man, what we listen to. That's the heartbeat that drives the hood. You know, I know people want to embrace hip-hop and take it and make it their own, but commercializing it is taking away from the authenticity of it. You know, when you commercialize something so genuine, man, it turns into a poison now. You know?
Yeah.
I just left for high school today. Well, I was talking to these kids, man, and these kids really got their head off straight, man. But at the same time, I wonder what they feeding them as far as what they listening to.
Right.
You know, I grew up on Public Enemy and Marvin Gaye and Parliament and shit like that. But today, it's going up on, I don't know.
Do you think that with this commercialization of hip-hop that it helps keep the culture alive, or do you think that the roots of hip-hop are so strong that even if rap music...
Yeah, man, I think you kill it. I think that kills it. The commercialization of hip-hop killed it. You know, there's no respect in the hip-hop no more. You know, yeah, I mean, you don't need nothing to keep hip-hop alive. Hip-hop is already deeply rooted. The roots are deep, man.
Right.
How you gonna commercialize some shit to make it stay around forever? Fuck no. That's how you kill it. Anything that was ever commercialized died.
Right.
Anything that you can put your hands on to commercialize, it died. Let me give you an example of the commercialized. Look at shit, hip hop, perfect example. See, back in the gap, we had a certain level of you let certain shit through the cracks, and then you hit it with a lot of great shit. You know what I'm saying? You let some terrible rap get through, and then you flooded out the terrible rap with the great rap, right?
Right.
Now you've got a lot of terrible shit going on. Outside of artists like Drake and Kendrick and a couple more artists that's not really coming to mind right now, but that's dope, you know, like some dope ass artists. You got a couple of dope ass artists, but the dope ass artists are being flooded out by the bullshit now.
Right.
Accountability is very important in this community, man. I fucking hate the way it went. You know, the way this game went.
Do you think it's reversible now, the commercialization, or no?
Until we start controlling what our community is, we're dead. It don't count no more. It don't count no more. The commercialization. What does that mean? Attaching to it and fucking it up? Is that what commercialization means? Yeah. To attach to something and fuck it up. Hip hop, the beat of the streets. Turn it back to the beat of the streets. Make everybody rap now. I remember Blast Master Kara one year, man, you couldn't get on stage rap and whack around these rappers. You couldn't rap whack.
I grew up in an era where, like, my mother and other kids' mothers I know, like, they used to clean up white people's houses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And things of that nature. You know, it was a totally different struggle. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to now, like, kids, like, they parents got fairly decent jobs and make good money and stuff like that and live a lot more decent than how we grew up. I mean, we was still struggling. You know what I'm saying? We was like a welfare generation. So it's like totally different. And it shows in the music now. And
how do you think? I mean, how do you think this generation can learn to get that hunger again, or learn to get that creativity again?
I mean, I think they would just have to stop trying to repeat what they see in somebody else doing. Like, I think there's too many artists in the game that's just doing it just because they see somebody else doing it, but it's not really coming from the heart.
Right.
It's just like they only see one side of it. They see the jury, the money, the women. And they just see that side of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they forget all about struggle and pretty much rapping about topics that the majority of people can relate to. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody can't relate to driving around in a Phantom. Everybody can't relate to $100,000, $150,000 worth of jewelry on your neck.
Right.
Like, it's like where's the struggle at? You know what I mean?
Did you ever, when you started out, did you ever picture, or did you ever hope, I guess, for rap to become this popular, or was there something that did you worry that if it became this popular, this would be the result, like what's happening today?
You know what? I really couldn't have put my finger on that back then when I was coming up. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, when I did start, yeah, I did have plans to want to become popular. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't just strictly to become popular, just to to have money and to be rich or whatever. I mean, of course, that's part of the reason, but my main reason was I wanted to share my talent with the world. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to give the world something what G-Rap could do. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think I accomplished that on so many different levels, where it exceeded my generation that I came up in, and it went past that, and it trickled on down to even maybe cats in the recent generation. You know what I'm saying? It really wouldn't be a lot right now in this generation because they so detached from what the golden era would have been considered to be as far as hip hop is concerned. But I still get called for features, so. I mean, that obviously got to tell anybody something. You know what I mean?
I think we were just more disappointed at the realization that the way the industry actually works. Because you don't, until you're inside of it, when outside looking in, people could tell you, like, we heard Q-Tip say record company people are shady, industry rule number 4,000. I mean, we heard him say that.
Industry rule number 4080. Record company people are shady. So kids, watch your back because I think they.
You don't really think about it as much, until you're actually like dealing with these people on a day-to-day basis, and they sit there and like lie to your face or, something like that. So it's like just finding out that there are people, stepping into. I think anyone that's like coming from their formative years and stepping into like a professional environment, and you find out the world is like, you're like, oh man, so it's really like people just really lie to you and shit. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, but it's a lot of money involved, and it's a business, and it's like, we're so passionate about the artistry, but we always cognizant of the fact that there is a business side to it. This is the music business, the music industry. So it's not just about the music. That's what we signed up for, literally and figuratively, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we were disappointed in terms of like the fact that, they're trying to curb our artistry and, kind of water us down and make us this group that we didn't really want to be. We were disappointed that they didn't want to accept us for who we were in a way, but not so much like, we're not on a major label anymore, because we still had a lot of offers afterwards. It wasn't like we dropped, like, people were just like, oh, they're whack now and nobody wants to sign them. Like, we still had people that were like reaching out, like, you guys should sign with us and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, and we were just like, do we really want to jump back into that situation? Like, will it really be that different on another label? I mean, it's like, basically like, hopping back in bed with the enemy again kind of thing. So we that's why we decided, look, we realized that we had a fan base that, that like some people say it's underground, but I just feel like that's hip hop. I don't even feel like there's like underground hip hop. I feel like that's what hip hop originally was from the outset. The essence of hip hop is underground music. It's not meant to be this like big, huge corporate thing, even though it became that. But, that's not what, really what we originally set out to be. You know what I'm saying?
So when did that turning point, so to speak, actually occur? If you could kind of put your finger on it, was there a particular era, you would say, where perhaps hip-hop as a genre moved sort of too far away from its original ideals and just kind of became part of corporate America, I guess is one way of putting it? Is there a particular time when you can say that definitively happened?
I feel like that was kind of like a pivotal time because, when you had like, first thing I think about is actually like Bad Boy and Death Row. The money that they were making was like ridiculous, but they weren't necessarily doing pop records. In my mind, they weren't necessarily doing pop records, but they had that machine behind them. They had Interscope and like these huge, Universal and all these people with the huge money behind them. And also there was the merger at that time too. I'm not fully versed about it 100%, but I know that was around the time of the merger with radio. Before that, you had like all these different radio stations that had their own format, and that was at the time when Viacom, I believe, bought up like all these radio stations, and they merged them, and then the national radio format became super similar top 40 stuff all over the country. So I think those two things happening around the same time, I think that had a lot to do with the direction that major labels were looking to go. And as far as like, because especially on Jive, because that was, if you look at the artists they had at that time, there was Britney Spears, there was NSYNC, there was, I want to say the only urban artist that they had that was making that kind of pop money was R. Kelly at the time. And he was like the bread and butter of the urban side of them. But all the hip hop acts were phasing out. They were phasing all of them out at that time, whether it was Tribe or, there were some exceptions. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, they started phasing out of that. And they were looking to make us more like a boy bandy type hip hop group. I think that's what they saw in us.
And just to add to some of the points that you raised there, 1996, the Telecommunications Act, I think you kind of alluded to it there, where a lot of the diversity that radio was kind of affording listeners up to a certain point kind of went out the window, and that would kind of line up with your timeline in terms of when, Bad Boy and Death Row Records were selling, millions and millions of copies, sort of, I guess, 95, 96. So I think you're right that those two things happening at once. I mean, for someone who's involved in the industry like you are, I'm sure you must look at that time period and say it's almost a completely different world kind of before that time and after that time.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look 93 Till Infinity, that song was a radio song. That was obviously, the year was obviously 93, 94, so that was before that. But I always wonder if we had come out 97, first of all, if we had even been signed around that time. Second of all, if that song would have made it to radio around, after that point in time, So I just think, like, our timing was really good, but I think, the Telecommunications Act and the radio, the diversity of radio around that time was, I believe they still had top 40, but it was like, after they would play top 40 and then they would go into the mix and they would play DJs would actually still break records. You didn't really hear a lot of that afterwards, except for in certain markets. But the Bay Area, which is a huge radio market, I feel like definitely went away from that. And, it just started painting hip-hop with a broad stroke.
Let me ask you, Phesto, when you speak to maybe a young artist who is looking to get in the music business and maybe their ultimate dream is to sign with a major label, do you see that there's kind of a big discrepancy between what people think the music industry is and what it really is, having experienced it for yourself? Is there a big kind of gap in terms of people's perception?
I think people are getting more aware now, but there are still people who are kind of a little bit blind to the facts. Nowadays it's like so many outlets that people can get their music out now, and I think that's a positive thing, for the most part. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are still people that, because if you're just watching from afar and you see, people look like they have a lot of money and, they're driving fancy cars and living in, houses, and they don't know that stuff is like rented and
right.
leased and just, leased rented for the video, and just to create this image that these people are, having all of this success or whatever. But where are they 3 years later, 4 years later, 5 years? You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I could name probably 50 artists that came between that time that had hit records, you know what I mean, that were in steady rotation on the radio, look like they're driving a Testarossa or some type of ridiculous car, and the longevity isn't there, and then it's there's no retirement plan, there's no 401k for that stuff, so they're not sitting up, in Miami somewhere living off their retirement money from hip hop.
Right.
It's
right.
that's gone, so it's I try to always let people know about the pitfalls of the industry, because there's a lot of snakes out there and a lot of people that use your creative passion against you. And the goal of these record labels is flat out to make money. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel with music. They're not trying to put out great albums and rival the great music of yesteryear at all. You know what I mean? So that's why you have a lot of music that's, a lot of bottomless music that's just out there, you know what I mean? Doesn't have any substance, doesn't have any style to it. It's all recycled.
Right.
Because the ultimate goal is not to make great music. The ultimate goal is to make money. Unfortunately,
people do come in the game and just looking for that fast, quick buck, and not willing to put in the research on, what they're trying to do with this game. This is a very sensitive game, hip hop. We're trying to keep this going for generations. For the generations to come in 30 years, we want this shit to still be progressing. So, you do have culture vultures that come in just for that quick buck, and it's fucking up right now.
Yeah.
With radio playing songs 80 times a day, not having no balance with different artists, different kind of genres of music and hip hop.
Not nurturing the seeds from their region.
Exactly. In our day, we had balance. Not only the artists who talked about money and jewelry won, but we had conscious artists that was winning. For example, in our time, we had Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown that taught women about getting money and style and fashion. But then we had chicks like Bahamadia, Mother Superior.
Who was getting radio play.
Nefertiti.
Nefertiti, yes.
Yes, and these women.
The Queen Latifah.
Queen Latifah. They brought consciousness to the game. But overall, it was balanced.
Right.
And it showed women and artists that you don't have to be a certain way to win. You can also do this and win, and teach someone something to win. So,
was there ever, I guess, out of the media spotlight, was there ever a conversation that all MCs had together about, did you ever say, this is the issue right now?
I did tons and tons and tons of interviews, had conversations with people, and it just felt like, and this is kind of my first introduction to, which I kind of played, this kind of worked against me in many ways, but I just had to take the good with the bad. It was my one big drawback in terms of not having a publicist. I had a publicist at Jive Records Dwayne Taylor, but he used to be mad because I would very rarely want to do interviews and things of that nature. Write on magazines and stuff like that would come through, but I really didn't do a lot of them because it always felt like the media always wanted to go for the fluff. And no matter how many times I talked about that, it just felt like that didn't sell papers, it didn't sell records, so they used the titillation thing, and it always felt like they go for the lowest common denominator, and the superficial, sensational side sold more. So it was much better to focus on the ego as opposed to the heart of the matter.
Can hip hop now? Can hip hop go back to what you've kind of always hoped it would do? I mean, with all the power that it has. I mean, it's the number one selling art form or music in the States. It's huge, internationally. Is there a movement to get back to, the roots of what's happening, or is it always going to be like this kind of bling bling gangster mentality?
I don't think it'll always be that. I think it'll organically change, but I do think that there are quote-unquote powers that be, and I don't mean it in this big, wicked, big conspiracy theme, but I think playing to the lowest common denominator when it comes to entertainment, whether it's television or radio, and sometimes film, but definitely television and radio, reality TV, and even the art form of hip-hop in particular, it's fast money, fast food. The people that are in charge of the distribution of the entertainment or making the most money off of it don't really have a vested interest in anything other than making money. So the reason you'll put certain reality TV shows on is because the train wreck effect is what you're guaranteeing. It's not really about learning anything or moving the culture forward. It's literally about just making money on that version of the culture. It's kind of like what Jerry Springer did back in the day.
Right.
It's just basically that kind of mentality is what works hand in hand with the artist. So it's not to say that the artists don't have a right to say what they want to say or do what they want to do, but if something's not popular, the artist will also follow suit. If you knew that you couldn't get a record on the radio saying some of the things you said, then you wouldn't say them because your objective is also to make money and try to be profitable. So, it's the downside of capitalism when you play to the lowest common denominator, and nobody's trying to set anybody up to be have any longevity. So what you have is a situation where even the guys doing it are trying to get as much money as they can because it's like this may not last and probably won't based on how the industry goes.
I'm not going to play. I'm not going to nickname it. And I noticed that if you don't say it, because, see, to me, this is the third layer of something that's been talked about. Everything that's going on in music right now, man, I've been said this, man. Like, I said this for a long time, and ain't nobody going to acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's going to acknowledge it. So now I just have to just stand on it. And, I feel like at the same time, it ain't even about jabs. It's about the reality.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's about the reality. And I want kids and I want people to know the reality of this game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like people always want to be in this game. I got nephews and nieces who want to be in this. I got friends who want to be in it. But they don't want to be in it, if you ask me. They think they do. Mm. And so, if you sort of tear down some of the facades, that helps me live a bit more peacefully, amongst, the people that are tugging at my coattail, like, yo, I'm trying to do this. Like, man, it ain't all that.
Yeah.
It's not.
Can you be specific about which game you're talking about?
What do you mean? I'm talking about the music game.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm talking about the music game, totally. I feel like that's where some of the, a lot of my, focus was on. I mean, even in Untouchable, for example, when I'm talking to my friend Moo, literally just came home from the feds. Amazing, was an amazing rapper and songwriter before he went in. Lived in Richmond, worked out of the Trey Songz camp for years. We known each other for years. Stayed that far away from each other, but always knew each other. Came home. He did tell me like, yo, you ain't making them records that's like them bounce joints, man. Like, what you doing? Like, you missing out on all this club money. And it's like, that's a way of looking at it. And I know he's coming from an incarcerated place. His best friend is, pop R&B, do tours, they do their thing. But it's different.